I'm so glad, guys, to be joined by Sophie Cantu from Texas. And she is joining us after quite the journey the last few years since her initial diagnosis. So, Sophie, just kind of opening question. When you look back on the last couple of years, what's one word you feel like captures your journey?
Yeah, I think there's a handful of words I can think of, like resilience, perseverance, whiplash. But
Yes.
one I think of really is initiative. Refusing to sit back and let this disease take over, initiative for my treatments, to find people to connect with, to find the doctors I want to go to, the treatments I want, and just continuing to, live my life to the fullest. I think that's one that I think of for the last few years, a positive word at least.
No, I love it. And I think whiplash absolutely applies. And we don't only get to have positive words. It's really okay for us to have the good and the challenging, I think.
Right.
Okay, so then what do you want uveal melanoma patients who are listening today, especially those in the metastatic world, particularly the younger metastatic community, to feel after hearing your story today?
I mean, I hope that they can feel empowered to, take their own initiative and then also know that you don't have to settle for any certain treatment and you can ask all the questions and get all the opinions that you need. And just that, life isn't over and that there is hope for a cure and there's not this timeline that, you might see on Google when you look up the disease.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you guys, today we are sharing Sophie's story with uveal melanoma, focusing a little bit, not a little bit, focusing mostly on her experience with the tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy, which is actually a clinical trial. I know it's a little confusing because we do have a cutaneous TIL therapy that is FDA approved. However, this is different. It's similar, mechanisms, similar ideas, but this is the trial. And take notes if you guys are listening, jot this down. This is the trial number NCT 03467516, and it's led by Dr. Uday. How do you
Mhm.
say it? Uday Kumala, or Kamula, sorry. And we're going to be talking about obviously why Sophie is hopeful about what's coming next, and just kind of get a feel for what led her to where she is today. So Sophie, let's just like take this back. Let's fast forward backwards, I suppose, rewind to November of 2022 when you were initially diagnosed. You were seeing flashes. What happened from that first appointment, from getting the uveal melanoma diagnosis?
Yeah, so I had been seeing flashes for only like a few weeks. And, I worked in a really stressful job. I worked in child abuse, being a child therapist. So I thought maybe I'm just getting some migraines or I'm stressed out. But I went to the eye doctor one day after work and they, looked at my eye and they said, "Oh, your retina's detached. You need to go see a retina specialist right away." And I was like, "Do I need to call my boyfriend at the time? Do I need a ride or whatever?" They're like, "No, you're good. You need to go right away." So I was like, "Whatever." So I went to a retina specialist, and the doctor looked at my eye for maybe 10 seconds and then just said, "It's cancer." And I was like, "What?"
10 seconds.
um,
You got it. Okay.
yeah. So then you just kind of explained that this is a very rare, very aggressive cancer, and if it's anywhere else, it's really bad, essentially. And so, um, after that, I got connected with Dr. Harbour in Dallas through a friend of mine who was a resident at UT Southwestern, and I went to him for my care after that quick diagnosis.
Okay, so you had treatment in January 2023 with Dr. Harbour, and what did that treatment and recovery look like for you?
Yeah, I had the plaque brachytherapy, and I tried to have my mindset of, I'm really grateful that I get to keep my eye because I know that that's not the case for everyone. And so the treatment was, it wasn't painless. It wasn't as painful as I anticipated. I had never had a surgery before. So I kind of had a lot of fear going in, but the recovery was better than I expected. I also am not someone who slows down. So I probably pushed things a
I
little
get that.
bit, but it, there was pain and it was discomfort and my vision was kind of fuzzy getting back, but it wasn't too bad.
You had the plaque brachytherapy, and then you had the Castle test, it sounds like. So what did your Castle test show?
My Castle test was class 2 PRAME negative. And then I can't remember if BAP1 was in that testing or a different one, but that was not what I was hoping for. So that
Yeah.
was pretty disappointing whenever I got that news.
And just for reference for those of you guys listening, Sophie, how old were you when you were initially diagnosed?
When I was initially diagnosed, I think I was 29. I'm 32 now, so I think I was 29.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's about the same age that I was. I was 28.
Yeah.
I was 28 and I'm 34 now, so I get it. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot. Okay, so with that risk factor, you had a scan schedule based on your class 2 diagnosis, which
Mhm.
we're so grateful that we have the information to use for informing scans, but it is challenging to have scans every 3 months.
Yeah.
So what did normal life look like during that point when you were scanning every 3 months?
It felt like I was living life kind of 3 months at a time. And really, I would, get scans, things would be clear. I would feel good pretty much until whenever I knew the scans were coming up a week before, I was so, so, so anxious and really just trying to let's stay in the moment, stay positive, all of the things. And then I would get scans. Whenever I'd get results, I would be calm, thankful, great. Let's kind of keep going. It was kind of just that cycle. So living my normal life, but also with this impending, when is this going to happen to me? Kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and it's a lot to juggle, living that kind of I guess it's kind of like living in the space of those 3 months because
Yeah,
you're almost waiting to see, waiting for what the doctors have told you is kind of statistically inevitable,
right.
or very likely, right? And of course, now we have I don't know, like when you and I were diagnosed back in that 2020 2022 range, the Castle test was helpful for informing the scan schedule, but it was pretty terrifying, honestly, if you were a class 2 diagnosis, because it said you had over a 50% chance of
Mhm.
metastasizing, and over 50% chance doesn't seem great.
No.
Um, Now, for those of you guys listening, the Castle testing has been updated. So the statistics, which I mean, Sophie, like I like to live by the phrase "be your own statistic," but for the purpose of information, the statistics do look better now. I think it's technically a little bit less than 50%, but don't quote me on that. Just go check for the most up-to-date uveal melanoma risk reports and check out our webinar that we did on that just this last December. And I think there's also a few things from the I Believe meetings that we've done, where we've got people like Dr. Harbour and other people in the COOG researching community who have explained how that all works. So anyway, I digress. So I want to ask you, in the middle of all of this, you planned a wedding.
Uh-huh.
So how did that go? Let's talk about your wedding real quick, because that's such a fun time.
Yeah. So the weekend I got diagnosed, my now husband was actually going to propose that next weekend. He had it planned out already, and I know he called two of my best friends, was like, "Should I just do it now? I want her to know I'm here for her through sickness and health and everything." And thankfully, he waited a little bit just for me to get that original MRI and kind of feel a little bit, have a plan because I'm a big planner. Um, and so, planning the wedding throughout was, fun and hopeful. And all of my friends had pretty much gotten married that year before. And um, it was stressful, but it was also kind of like a really nice distraction to have something else to kind of put a lot of my energy to. And then I'd have scans and we'd feel better, like, okay, we can look to the future a little bit more. We might get stuck a little bit, but then we can look to the future. um but my wedding was great. My husband is incredible, his family's incredible. I'm so thankful that I have their support and had their support through this crazy, crazy, crazy time that's continued.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad. I loved seeing your pictures. I remember there was one of the pictures that you posted on your social media that I think it was by like a giant eyeball, and it was kind of crazy that it happened.
Yeah, it was actually funny because there's a big eyeball in downtown Dallas. I don't know what it is, but we were supposed to have our pictures somewhere else. They had double planned it, double booked it, and so there was this green field, and I was like, "This is so ironic and a little bit annoying, but also just feels right because why?" And it's also
Why
just
would
felt
the eyeball be here for me today?
right. It just feels a little indicative of my life, where it's always kind of in the back of my mind, this thing. But we made the best of it and took some funny pictures in front of it.
No, I thought they were so funny. Okay, well, let's fast forward a little bit to July 2024. And I remember you and I were in touch at this point. We were texting, there was a lot going on. Can you take us back to that July 2024 scan and kind of why it was happening the way that it did and how you're feeling at that moment?
Yeah, so thinking back to that July I want to go back to that me and give her a hug. But So I was actually pregnant at the time. I thought, or from my understanding, I was about 12 weeks. And so we did an MRI. We still did my regular schedule of, 3-month scans, but we did it without contrast. And so I honestly, at that point, that day, I remember normally scan day, I'm not feeling very great, very hopeful. But that day I was, okay, we're good. We're going to get through this scan. We're going to keep going. We get to announce our pregnancy. Yay, like future. And the results can take, sometimes I get them right after, sometimes I get them a week after. But that day I got my scan in the morning. I went to work. I was extremely nauseous. I had been so sick. And, I was about to see a client. I'm a therapist, and my scan results came up, and I had that. I don't know if you have the same visceral body response. And I looked at the scan and it said something, I can't remember the words exactly. Like something along the lines of non-viable pregnancy or something about the pregnancy, and then suspicious lesions in the liver. Um, and I called my husband. We both left work and we went home and we're just like, what is happening? I messaged all the doctors, my OB, Dr. C, Dr. Harbor. Yeah. And then we waited for a little bit until we could get any kind of answers from anyone.
Yeah, I remember that waiting period was horribly sucky for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think any of you guys listening, if you've ever been in that waiting space, whether you're waiting for clarification on scans or you've gotten some difficult news, I mean, you guys know, like it's hard. It's really hard to stay present with life and to kind of find your foot forward,
Mhm.
because you just get so, I mean, your life gets so interrupted in that moment. And I feel like you had, and I'm gonna try not to get emotional, but you had two things, two really critically hard things
Yeah.
that you found out about in the same day.
Yeah.
And I don't know many people who have that happen. I just know that I think it sucks. And I'm
Yeah.
really sorry that that happened to you.
Thank you. It sucks, and it just felt too, unreal to
Yeah.
happen. And so, I ended up my OB was incredible, and I ended up getting an ultrasound because we had, seen the heartbeat and done all of this stuff. And she ended up diagnosing me with a partial molar pregnancy, which is another extremely, extremely rare thing. With that, your HCG levels can be higher. So that was one of the reasons I was more sick, but also we were, thinking that, maybe because of these high HCG levels that led to, you can get like liver lesions somehow with
Yeah,
that.
like
And we had,
cysts and different things.
yeah, and we had attempted to, do some fertility preservation early on. And of course, I had bad luck with that and things didn't go my way. And so we were like, there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot going on. Maybe this is just a really uncomfortable coincidence. And so that in between period, a lot of people were, being hopeful, like, there's no way it's both of those things. It's no way. So I had to get the DNC, and then we had to wait a little bit to get the biopsy. And the interventional radiologist pretty much said, like, when I do the biopsy, if it's black, I know that it's the metastasis. And so he did the biopsy, and he was like, it's black. And I just went back to the room. My husband was there, and I think was a lot more hopeful than me. Just again, because he was like, there's no way that these both things are happening. And so then we found out and we knew, and I don't want to use the word peace because that wasn't the word, but more of like just, okay, this is it. I have the answer. I
Yeah,
know what
like
it
a
is.
turning
There's not
point.
this questioning, and what do we do next?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in this period, like this initial period of uveal melanoma metastatic diagnosis, who and what helped you to feel supported and grounded just in that kind of initial phases? Because I know like the initial part of uveal or of metastatic, um, your metastatic journey it can be really challenging. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my husband 100% just, I mean, a lifesaver, my rock, really. I know that's kind of cheesy to say, but him, my family, my friends, I honestly have the best support system. I've got a huge group of friends. My family, a lot of my family's local, and then my husband's family, they actually, I think his whole family, drove in that week just to kind of spend some time with us. And then, I mean, all my friends I have family friends. One of my mom's good friends and my friend, she was like, "I'm coming over now. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm coming over."
I'm coming over.
Uh, yep. And so all of my people were incredibly great to have, and within that, it still felt really, really isolating, and it still does sometimes. I have great support, and I'm so thankful, and I can always go to them. They're always praying for me, thinking of me, encouraging me, and sometimes it still does just feel really isolating, as you know.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that.
Aura Biosciences is a clinical stage biotechnology company focused on developing precision therapies for solid tumors that aim to preserve organ function. Our lead candidate, Belsar, is currently in late stage development for primary choroidal melanoma and in early stage development in other ocular oncology indications and bladder cancer. Our mission is to grow as an innovative global oncology company that positively transforms the lives of patients. For more information, please visit us at aurabiosciences.com.
All right, so let's fast forward to your treatments
Yeah.
for metastatic uveal melanoma. So your metastatic treatments, you have tried quite a few different things before you made it to TIL.
Mhm.
So let's just kind of briefly cover what are the areas that you, or the trials, the treatments that you did before TIL. I think starting with the IDEA trial, and you did that for about 4 months.
Mhm.
So what were you hoping that it would do, and why? And then what signaled the time to like kind of change direction?
Yeah, so originally whenever I heard about it, I don't know why. I just was like, I don't really love the idea of it. I don't know what it was, but I was like, whatever. This is what, they're recommending. Dr. C in Dallas, I talked to Dr. McKean in Nashville, Dr. Letsky in Miami. They were all like, let's start with this. So, um, started with that, got randomized to the highest dose of the drugs, which I was thankful for. That felt like a big win. Um, and had some pretty gnarly side effects. A lot of, GI, nausea, a lot of that going on. A lot of swelling, the edema. My legs were like huge. It was really bizarre. But I was on that for about 4 months. And I think my first scan, there was like a little bit of progression, but it wasn't enough to kick me off of the trial. And then the next one was kind of borderline, I think, too, where it was like, we're kind of stable, but we're seeing like a little bit of progression. And then the third one, it was over that 20% progression. And so we knew it was time to get off. It was disappointing because, I was like, well, overall, everything's fairly stable. There's not a ton of growth. And, whenever we signed up for that, the data at the time, people were on it for a good amount of time. And so then we were like,
Yeah.
oh, 4 months. Okay, that's all we get. So that was really disappointing. And that's when we went to the next trial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and for those of you guys listening, the IDEA trial does have really good data, and the data is continuing to improve. And, since this time, this was 2024, they are continuing to improve. Doctors across the country are continuing to improve in how well they can manage side effects. But that's part of being on a trial, right? Is you're kind of like some of the guinea pigs of figuring those out, figuring those things out. And like every trial, like every treatment, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works for somebody else, and there's really not a whole lot of rhyme or reason as to why right now, and that can be really frustrating. But I just admire that you guys went through the pivoting process so quickly. I felt like you were really efficient in like seeking out seeking out good doctors opinions and then moving forward and not getting kind of bogged down in the defeat, I guess, in that. And I think that that speaks loads to what you said at the beginning. Like you said, you took a lot of initiative, but I think on top of that you also had a lot of resilience because I mean, what choice do we have, right?
Right. Yeah. And, Dr. Harbour and Dr. C at UT Southwestern were both so great. And they're so collaborative with other doctors. And so that was really, really helpful just to have their support too, to like, yeah, let's get some second opinions. Let's make sure we're not missing anything else. And that we all feel that this is like the best choice for you.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a really solid team, and I think that makes a really big difference
Yeah.
in your confidence in approaching what you're doing,
Hmm.
even when you have curveballs kind of thrown your way.
Right.
Um, okay, so after this point, you joined the Replimune trial, and
Hmm.
you were randomized to Ipi-Nivo, which I know I got when you told me that I was so disappointed because the RP2 trial, the RP2 injection, like all of it is just so the science is so cool to me.
Right.
I've known about this trial personally, and so like just on a personal level, I was just really rooting for like you and anyone else that I know who's been trying to get into the RP2 trial to get injected instead of to get the randomization. Because we've all heard all the gnarly things about Ipi-Nivo, and it can be challenging. But what was it like physically and emotionally for you?
Yeah, so I mean that's been like the whiplash kind of comes in,
Oh, yeah.
hopeful with idea and then it goes down and then okay, Replimune, we're super excited about it. I was with Dr. Moser in Arizona and I know we met whenever I think I was getting my scans, which is so great to meet you in person. And so yeah, I'm in Dallas, so we're gonna fly out just because the way randomizations happen and you have to have this time period and all of those logistics. The trial coordinator, she was great. She called me and just said you got randomized to Ipi-Nivo, and I was just, I mean, again, I'm going to say this word 15 times, but just devastated and gutted, and just was like, why? This sucks.
Like,
Why?
like
Um,
why bad news after bad news? This feels so hard.
exactly, and it's, you get hope and then you get knocked down. And so I think a lot of the doctors were at the MRA, I think it was the MRA conference that weekend, or they were all somewhere. And so they were all busy, and I was trying to get a hold of the doctors, and Dr. Moser, ended up calling me and saying, of I don't know what his words were, but like this sucks. And also, let's try the Ipi-Nivo. Like, why
Yeah.
not try it? Here we are. Go ahead and still come if that's what you want to do. And so, and some of the other doctors reiterated that too. So, I was like, all right, let's do that. Maybe I'll be in this small statistic of people that Ipi-Nivo works for. And so, just tried to reframe my mindset. We're helping science. Maybe I'll respond to this,
Yeah.
whatever. So we went to Arizona for a couple rounds of the Ipi-Nivo. And like when I said, I don't stop, my first round of Ipi-Nivo, I went to Arizona for Ipi-Nivo, and then we had a ski trip, my first time skiing, planned that next weekend. So got Ipi-Nivo and then went to Aspen and didn't feel great, but didn't feel horrible yet. But kind of that dichotomy of I'm going to do this treatment, but I'm not going to let it slow me down, and I'm going to spend time with my friends and appreciate life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you ended up experiencing severe colitis, which is one of the more challenging side effects with Ipi-Nivo. What do you wish people understood better about immune-related side effects and the recovery from that? Because, I know that was just really rough for you.
Yeah, I guess, and Dr. Moser's team was very on it, wanting me to tell them every side effect I had, all of that. It was a little difficult when the side effects kind of hit when I was back in Dallas and not in Arizona. I think just that, you never really know what side effects are going to look like, but that they look really different. With colitis, I had the typical extreme GI upset, but I also was having some really, really high fevers. I had a fever of like 105 and went to the hospital. And, I think what I would encourage others is, I was at a great hospital in the ER, but really just wanting maybe some extra tests and kind of checking for that colitis, because I went to the ER a couple times. They did blood tests, all of that stuff. And then I went again, and then they did a CT and they were like, oh my gosh, you have insane colitis.
Yeah.
Um, the treatment for me, once like starting the steroids, I know this isn't everyone's experience, but I felt great on the steroids. I had a lot of energy.
You're
Um,
great.
yeah, it was great. And so I was on the steroids, but then we tapered off really quickly just when we were trying to pivot treatments. And that's when things got worse before they got better.
Mhm.
Um, but,
And
and
so
also,
you think you tapered too fast, right?
yeah, yeah. I was trying to remember the order of everything. So there was maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of colitis. We were trying to taper off. And then we were trying to taper off because then we were looking at my next treatment for TIL because um, there was growth on the Ipi-Nivo. And so steroids with your lymphocytes are not good. So we were trying to get off of it ASAP just to
Mm.
make our
Yeah.
next moves. And I think we just went a little bit too quickly and my body wasn't ready for it. But once we knew what it was, we got that treated on the right dosage. Um, Things started to look better and feel better a lot more quickly. So that was good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we are finally to talking about TIL. So you guys listening, make sure to just stick with us for this part because Sophie's story is so cool. It's so inspiring, and I feel like it just speaks volumes to just how much science can advance in just a short period of time. Those of you guys who have heard of TIL therapy, you might have heard of Katie Doble's story. I know that Sophie and I have connected with Katie. She's a huge advocate for uveal melanoma. Um, so just kind of keep that in mind. We'll link a couple of those like news articles and things that we have from the most latest or the latest stories and kind of news articles around the TIL therapy and the trial itself. And again, the NCT number is NCT 03467516. So Sophie, you said that TIL was something that was kind of always on your brain. Um, because it just made a lot of sense to you. What do you feel like clicked about like how it worked and what you had learned?
The first time we heard about it was whenever we met with Dr. Lutsky in Miami, and he was just kind of talking about all the different things out there. And there was just something about the idea of, um, you know, pretty much reprogramming your immune system to fight the cancer and the full body effect that it just sounded right to me. And that's kind of what you ideally want. Um, and so, yeah, I just think that idea from the beginning really clicked with me, but it was a little bit more in the back of my mind because I knew it was a more lengthy process and a little bit, I had heard it was really, really extreme.
Yeah, very. It has a lot of a reputation in the uveal melanoma community, at least from what I have heard. The last 5 or so years since my diagnosis, TIL has a reputation for being considered extreme, um, and and also really intense. I think is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of patients, it was an intensity that it was kind of rumored to be this intense treatment that didn't have very good with kind of ways to guarantee if it would or wouldn't work. Um, and so that's kind of what we're going to talk a little more about later. So stay tuned. Is how Dr. Kamula has improved his process over the last, I don't even know, probably the last decade or more, like of all of his studying of this. So let's just backtrack though. How would you explain TIL to your family or, just to anybody else who's listening in very plain language?
Okay. This is hard because it is so scientific. So, really, the idea is in the tumors, you have these lymphocytes. And so, Dr. Kamula extracts the tumors, gets these lymphocytes, tests them to see if they're potent, basically, if they have this tumor infiltrating quality. If they are, he grows them, expands them, and then you get chemo, wipe your immune system, essentially like a blank slate. They put the TIL in, which is kind of like your new immune system. And then you get some immunotherapy to really boost that up and bolster that to really give it that power to fight off the cancer. And so, they test one thing that's, I mean, there's so many things really cool about Dr. Kamula's trial, but they test the tumor infiltrating lymphocytes on my exact tumor. So we know that in theory, the tumor it's fighting the tumor. It's potent against the tumor. So that really gives you some hope for that. And another thing with Dr. Kamula is that he is not going to put anyone through this if he doesn't even have like think that it could possibly be beneficial. He's not going to put someone through this if the chances are really low, which I do appreciate. And I was really thankful that I got the opportunity to go through the treatment.
Yeah. So it sounds like he has kind of revamped the process of joining the trial so that you have to kind of have this evaluation period first with the biopsy and where he like grows the tumor cells and determines is it really, how good of a chance does it have of working?
Hmm.
And I think in one of the news reports that I read recently, or the study reports, like he has kind of a list of the things he looks for basically
Right.
in your labs in how the tumor looks under the microscope. Like there's a lot to the biology of it, and I really hope that we get to talk to Dr. Kamula directly. I'm super excited to hopefully line up chatting with him in the next few months. So
Yeah, he's
if you're
incredible.
listening, Dr. Kamula, I would like to talk to you. We're going to send Sophie's story to you so that we want to chat. But then once you get to that point, you have the biopsy, then what happens? I think it's like a pretty, and I was a little worried for you because I heard that the liver resection part where they like actually remove more than just a core biopsy was like, oh, that sounds, I mean, I know my liver surgery was rough. Um, but yeah, how did that go for you for the next steps?
Yeah, so I had the biopsy, and They I actually did two biopsies. So the first one, they have this scoring system, and mine was a little bit inconclusive. It sounded like kind of on the line, and then they did another biopsy, which had a higher score. And at that point, my cortisol was actually really low, which was surprising because you would think your cortisol is like out of the roof having stage 4 cancer. But
Oh, well, and also
um,
the steroids. I think that that also can be, it can
yeah,
like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but
I
anyway,
don't
I
know.
digress.
I think everyone was a little bit confused, but eventually we got that all settled. And then I went in for the liver resection and he took out, I think he said 5 lesions. Um, and I have, a big one, kind of just called the big boy that we really want to get rid of. And then we have a handful of little ones. And so he took those out. And, it was painful and uncomfortable after, but it wasn't horrible. I think for me, just the not, I'm a really active person. And so not being active was more difficult for me.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then I went back, I meant to look this up before we met. I went back up to Pittsburgh again, to do, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head. I did something where they had a central line in, got my white blood cells. Um,
I don't
I
know what
can't
that's
remember.
called.
I know, I should know.
That's
I,
okay.
I
If you
forgot
guys
again.
know, drop it in the comments. Like,
Right. I'll think about it once we get off this call. But I did that. The idea is to get my white blood cells to help grow the TIL. And so then after that, um, Dr. Camula let me know, hey, your TIL is really potent. It's looking really good. We can move forward with treatment. And so then I was admitted to the hospital. Again, I got another central line, which I ended up getting an infection. And so that was fun, but everything was okay. And I had 7 days of chemo. They did the TIL infusion day, and then they did the immunotherapy, which we can kind of get into what those three different kind of sections look like, if that's helpful
yeah,
too.
for sure. Well, before we get into that, when you were told that you had really potent TIL, what did that mean for you in the moment?
Oh my gosh, I was elated. It was just, I mean, hope. Again, I was also a little bit hesitant because I think I'd kind of been knocked down a little bit, but I was
Yeah.
really hopeful. And like you said, I'd connected with Katie. And so we had been talking a lot, and she was really encouraging. And I know that was some of her original um, feedback that she had gotten, was that she had really potent TIL. And so at least to know, okay, this worked outside of my body. So there's a decent possibility that it'll work inside my body. So it was really, really encouraging and hopeful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, and like I feel like I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding a couple things. So you had 5 tumors that were resected, and do you know
Mhm.
roughly how much like tumor volume that was? Because I think for the trial they need a certain volume of tumor tissue to be able to work with to grow the TIL.
Yeah, I know. I think they have to have like at least 2 centimeters, which
Okay. Which isn't
they
very
let
much
me
if
know.
you
I had
actually look at that.
Right. I had plenty to go off of, apparently. And
Oh,
so I don't know exactly what the volume was of what he took out, but he didn't take the large one. He said that one was already looking a little bit necrotic, and so he took some that, from what he knows from doing this for all of these years, they looked like the best ones, and so he took
yeah.
those out.
So did that make you feel a little bit better, like that he had removed some of the tumors while you were in this waiting period before you could start the official therapy?
Yeah, it was nice to know that, okay, we got rid of some at least. We're not just
At least
waiting,
these
waiting,
ones can't
waiting.
come back.
Right. Yeah. No, that felt really good to say, okay, at least some of it's fully out and we're going to use it for something. They're not just sitting there
Yeah.
anymore.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's get into a little bit more of like what the chemo infusion and the IL, is it the IL-2
Yeah.
infusion was like? So you had 7 days of chemo. What was the hardest part? Maybe the hardest side effect that you felt like you had to deal with in that first week?
The I think after the second dose of chemo, the next morning I woke up and I was so nauseous. And we went through every single drug I think they could allow until we could
Yeah.
calm that down. So it was pretty intense, the nausea. But once we kind of figured out which medications worked best for me. The staff was incredible. They've, worked with this treatment for a while, and so they kind of know what to try. So once we figured out, okay, we need to do this medication before the chemo, it was a lot better. I well, not a little bit, but and I was just tired and fatigued after that. But that first day was probably the worst with the chemo.
Yeah, for sure. And just for, let's just kind of clock a timeline here. When you traveled to Pittsburgh at this point to go to UPMC, you were slated to be there for roughly how long, including the chemo and the infusion and the IL-2?
I think originally they had said like 3.5 weeks. That's kind
Okay.
of the idea. So I went the first day I got admitted, got the central line put in was the 29th, which was actually a full year since that original scan that I had gotten. So that was kind of cool. And also I was like, this feels like a good coincidence. So let's kind of lean on that a little bit.
Okay, so then you get to TIL infusion day.
hmm
What do you remember the most about that day? Was it like, I don't know, was it crazy? Did you feel anything?
They kind of warned me that it was going to be a little anticlimactic, which it was. I didn't really have side effects from it, but it was just exciting because you're part of science. These are these tills that they had manufactured and grown and done all of that. And there's so much hope in that. And, the nursing staff, they were all really excited. There's a lot of people in the room, and they treated everything so carefully. And, Dr. Kamula and his team were there, and everything was just, it was really exciting. And so we get this infusion, then we're like, okay. Then we just kind of hung out the rest of the day. So, I just really remember the excitement from everyone that day. My dad and husband were there, and so it was just really cool to feel like we were really starting on something that could really help me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Castle Biosciences is a proud sponsor of this I Believe podcast. Castle's innovative uveal melanoma tests provide valuable information about the risk of your eye cancer spreading to help you and your healthcare team individualize the management of your disease. To learn more, visit castlebiosciences.com.
Okay, so then after that, you had 6 rounds of IL-2. So
Mhm.
maybe just explain what is that and how did your body handle it?
Yeah, so that's an immunotherapy that ideally kind of helps wake up the TILs once they're in your body to kind of put them to work. Um, I believe, and again, look this up. I believe that the TILs were kind of grown and some of the IL-2, so they're familiar with it. So that's why when they put it in
Okay.
your body, it kind of wakes them up. Why that's kind of connected. And so it's an immunotherapy, and there was 6 rounds. I think it was every 8 hours, and really it just kind of depends on how your body handles it. If you do the full 6 rounds, um, I thankfully was able to do it. The weirdest part, really, I mean, there was fatigue, but they talk about like these shakes that you get, and so it really was, the nurses were so spot on. They were like, you're probably going to get it within 30-45 minutes. You might get these. Once you get those, we'll give you this medicine XYZ, and they were pretty spot on. um but it was, about I think 30-45 minutes in, I just started uncontrollably shaking. They had this warm blanket balloon type situation they put over me, and then I got medicine, and they stopped after a few minutes. But that happened probably 4 of the 6 rounds. It wasn't necessarily painful, it was just uncomfortable and weird. um
Yeah.
and really just the biggest discomfort for me was I just had to be hooked up to all this stuff at all times, and getting a
Yeah.
lot of fluids, so getting up and down and not really being able to sleep because having, being checked on at all times, that was probably the most uncomfortable part of that. But it definitely was not as bad as I expected. I have told my husband and friends, like, I would rather go through that again than do the colitis or the idea again, because of just the way I had side effects. And I know it's different for everyone, but that's one reason I really wanted, to talk with you about this, is because I do think TIL is explained to be this really big, scary, horrific process. I think a doctor or a nurse somewhere else had called it barbaric. And I was like, great, that's exciting. But it really was doable, when you are wanting to fight this thing and you're wanting to have more years, days, whatever it is. I think going through something like this, which is of course uncomfortable and has pain and everything, but it's worth it. A little bit of discomfort is worth a lot of hope.
Well, and it's temporary, right? Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
right now, I mean, you had this is at this point, we're 7 days, 8 days on, day 8 for the till, and then six doses, which were did you say every 8 hours?
I think it was every 8 hours. Yeah, eight or
Yeah,
12.
every 8 hours. So, I mean, 8 times 6 is crap. What is that?
Don't ask me.
48, 48 hours. That's 2 days. Um, right? Somebody do my math. My kids aren't here to correct me. Um, but I mean, that's 10 days. And then you have the next period of time of observation and staying in the hospital to make sure that, that you're responding okay. They don't need to address anything particularly. Um, And I mean, I'm the same as you. Like, I feel like that's how a lot of people have described the Hepzato treatment is like it's kind of barbaric sounding, right? Like you've got all
Hmm.
this, I mean, they put you to sleep every time. They put all of these catheters into your neck and into your groin, like, and it is physically, really kind of strenuous for the 24 hours that you're dealing with it. But then you go home and like, for the most part, most people are up and at it within, a week,
Right.
and they lead pretty normal lives. I mean, there's obviously with everything, there are exceptions. And it's not to say that, people who do TIL don't also experience a gambit of symptoms and have challenges, but it's not like a 100%, right? Like we get to be our own statistic. And
Right.
who
Yeah.
knows? You could be someone who responds super well and doesn't have horrendous side effects. Or, like you said, it's temporary and you can go
Right.
through something temporarily. I almost feel like uveal melanoma patients in the cancer world, we get a little spoiled because we have a cancer that's so different than other cancers, but it's also treated differently than other
Hmm.
cancers. And if you don't go through an intense clinical trial or something like TIL or Hepzato on a regular basis, you don't really have a cancer treatment. Like there's not I mean, I didn't have treatment like other than microwave ablation, surgery. I didn't have anything that was really invasive to my life on a consistent basis for years and I
Hmm.
lucked out like in that regard.
Right.
Most cancers don't have that luxury of any period of time that you get to kind of just watch and wait, and the watching and waiting sucks, but like I feel like it almost trains us as patients to expect that we should never have to do anything hard. But
Right.
I mean, in the world of cancer treatment, I mean, and I'm not at all saying that all cancer treatment should suck and be hard. Like I work with a naturopath oncologist personally because I believe that it shouldn't completely wreck my entire way of
Right.
living. But we can do hard things,
Yeah.
especially when they're temporary.
Absolutely. And around after my diagnosis, one of my best friends had gotten diagnosed with breast cancer. And so she went through all of that treatment. And that, chemo every week is just exhausting. And watching her go through that and surgery, I almost felt a little spoiled that I was like, okay, I get this little stint of time in the hospital and then I get out. The mental toll for me has been way more difficult than the physical toll. But
Yeah.
um, I mean, again, I think whenever you get this diagnosis, you just get some kind of inherent resilience where you're like, whatever, do whatever to me that can keep me here longer to be with my people and just give me hope to, ideally one day be free of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's fast forward a little bit because it's been a good number of months for you since
Yeah.
your initial TIL treatment. And you shared recently that your, is it resist or
Hmm.
resist? Yeah, your resist showed 76% shrinkage. So where were you when you heard that news and what did it feel like?
Yeah. So with the resist scoring, it's interesting what they do for clinical trials is they essentially choose some target lesions. They choose target lesions to measure, so they're not looking at everything. So after my first scan, which was after four weeks after, can't remember if it was 4 weeks after I got the actual TIL or after the full treatment, but um, I went to Pittsburgh, I got a scan, and I am very impatient. And and Dr. Kamula is very responsive. I meant to say that too. The whole time he came and saw me every day, asking for side effects, checking in, emailing me after. He's just so incredible and so um, compassionate and just wants the best for his patients. He's so dedicated. But after we got our scan, I was like, "Hey, Dr. Camila, got my scan. If you see anything cool, let me know." And he had kind of emailed me back like things look great, and I was like, "Does that mean shrinkage?" And he said yes. And for my husband and I, we had never heard shrinkage since I had gotten the metastatic diagnosis, and so that was kind of hard to comprehend. And originally when we saw my resist scoring was 67%, and um it looks different on how a typical radiologist would read the MRI versus Dr. Kamula, because he had explained, I've seen your liver, I've seen your lesions, they have a lot of melanin, and so the way that they show up on um different types of the scans or different, I don't know, all of the sciencey stuff, it looks a little bit different, so he takes the time to look at that himself. And so um yeah, that first scan, we were just in shock. I think I'm still in a little bit of shock. The second time he had, said things continued, or after my third scan, things continue to look good. We're not seeing any growth, which it sounds like typically with TIL, if you have growth, you see it. It's not like, I'm
Yeah,
not
it's like
sure
pretty
if
soon
it's,
after.
yeah, like it's not this kind of questioning. And so, um, yeah, this, whenever I saw the 76, it was actually on my note. I went through and looked at the note after, and I just, I mean, I just doesn't feel real. And I'm so thankful. And I hope it continues. I have scans in at the end of January, but it just provided real true, again, hope, for kind of the first time, and just a little bit of pride in myself for choosing this and doing this treatment, and just thankful that I have Dr. Kamula, and that there's these doctors that are giving their whole career to this rare cancer and giving patients like us, especially young patients, hope to have a life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's so tricky, right? You want to have the hope. You want to have the kind of look to the future. You don't want to be caught in the fear all the time, but sometimes the fear is really big. And it's really hard to kind of overcome that hurdle. Um, but I'm so glad that you've been able to have these periods of time, like where you've just had, okay, like cautiously optimistic for a little while, and then like a little more optimistic.
Hmm.
And um, and I want to point out, just kind of as a disclaimer, like just keep in mind these are Sophie's outcomes and Katie's. If you've heard of Katie's story, that's Katie's outcomes. And we're sharing this with the intention to be hopeful and to empower you guys with some information about the TIL therapy and about somebody's real life experience recently. But please keep in mind, like, don't take this as a blanket, we're expecting this kind of outcome for everybody. Obviously, we hope for this kind of outcome for more and more patients. And I think that's why Dr. Kamula is so, I mean, just in my observation of what he's been doing, that's why he's so dedicated and why
Hmm.
he's so intent on finding how he can help this work for more and more patients. And I love seeing that he's being a little more successful time
Yeah.
and time again. I think that's so good.
I was going to say, and I am so grateful that I am kind of, I like be your own statistic, that I'm falling into this category, hopefully. And, I have a friend of mine who's an oncologist, and he has been a godsend, and he's pretends to be my oncologist. I'll send him stuff and be like, before I can get a hold of mine, what's going on? Should I worry? And we've just kind of said, like, why not us? Like, why should it not be us? We've had all of this bad luck before. Let's really lean into the hope that we could be in this small group that it works for, and that we can help, hopefully. I mean, I hope too, my the lymphocytes, the TILs that they grew are some of the highest that they've seen, and so I'm hoping that somehow they can continue research through whatever is going on with mine to help more people.
Yeah, no, that's so exciting. Oh man. Okay, so just to kind of close out, for anybody who's listening and who's considering doing the TIL or just generally a clinical trial, what is something that you feel like they should know?
I mean, one, please reach out. I'm happy to talk to anyone. I think you should know, of course, know the risk, and I think the risks are going to be put out there for you pretty loudly, but also the benefits. I've met with other patients who are on clinical trials who maybe they're the one that it worked for, and so having that hope, even though it's small, but also knowing that, you know whenever whenever you're part of this science, it's really cool, and it's really huge, and I think it's special. And but again, if you are in the place where you're like, I don't like this doesn't feel good to me, it doesn't feel right, trust your gut too, and also get those second opinions, and make sure that you're with a provider that can explain the risk and the benefits that or the possible benefits to you, and that you feel comfortable with. I think that that's a big one too, is to advocate for yourself and to feel comfortable with the doctor that you're with and feel confident in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've done such a good job of just teasing out which oncologists you wanted to work with and why. And I think I think it's been really kind of just rewarding, I think, from a patient to patient perspective, just to see you like grab this by the reins and just go like where you wanted to go and to keep pursuing what you wanted and just trusting that things were going to work out, even if you couldn't see exactly how, like you were just trusting that like, okay, let's move forward, next step. Like
Right.
something's gotta stick eventually.
Exactly. That's kind of, I don't like when people tell me everything happens for a reason, but in my mind, I can say, okay, I can look back and say, okay, maybe it was good I didn't get the RP2 because it might have impacted my TILs. I can look back on that. But yeah, just wanting to like figuring out what's going to stick. Something's got to work. And
Yeah, for
hopefully
sure.
this is it.
All right. So, Sophie, what are you most excited about, like just looking forward in your life, like with your family, your husband, and what TIL could mean as this, hopefully continues to improve research for uveal melanoma?
I mean, in an ideal world, I would be someone like Katie who gets to this no evidence of disease spot. And, for me, I want to be a mom. I want to have a family. Adoption has always been on my heart, and I'm wondering if it's all of this is intertwined somehow. So that's a big one for me, is just to have a family, and then also to just continue to live. I have a ton of great friends. They've got a lot of great kids. I'm Auntie Sofa to a lot of them. The first someone coined that, but just being able to be an aunt and a sister and a daughter and a wife and a friend, and just experience life with this new form of gratitude that I wish I didn't have, but I also am a little bit grateful that I do have this perspective. And just going forward for TIL, for uveal melanoma and other cancers, just the hope that this can be something that we start to see the statistics being even higher and helping more people, and that this could be a treatment for, you go into the hospital, you have this surgery, you go into the hospital for a few weeks, and then you get this new immune system and it kills the cancer. That's putting it very briefly, but just that this could be a continued hopeful treatment for those of us with uveal melanoma, just because I know having a rare cancer is difficult. Of course, having cancer in general is difficult, but to have that hope is great. And I also do want to say I am not always this like optimistic, positive, great person. Having cancer and getting this bad news is heartbreaking and heavy and devastating, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But you kind of have to make a choice to, okay, am I going to let this knock me down for a week, or are we going to have a bad day and then get back up the next day? And so that's something I also just encourage other patients to do, which no one deserves this diagnosis. No one deserves to be in this situation, but um, feel those feelings, go to therapy, get on medication if you need to. um, but do all of those things and then also continue to live your life. I do think, like you said, with uveal melanoma, it's a little bit different, where sometimes the treatments are a little bit, they might be briefer, or it doesn't really impact your overall physical life right at the first, so continuing to live your life.
Sophie, thank you so much for being here today and for joining me on the podcast. We are so glad to have you here, have your bright and smiley face. I love seeing your posts and just checking in with you. And I feel privileged to be kind of on a front row seat to what you've been experiencing. And I really hope your January scans go so well. Um, it's really, I think it's really neat to see, your story continuing to evolve, and stories like Katie Doble's, and just to know that they're, not necessarily a promise of a cure immediately, but that they're proof that progress is real in science, right? And that progress is happening in uveal melanoma. Um, how cool that you get to be a part of that, right? And that you get to be a part of shaping the future of uveal melanoma treatments just because of how your body has responded. Like it's so neat and so unique. But Sophie, to end, if you could leave our listeners just with one affirmation or just belief today, what would that be?
I just think that there's always hope. Always lean on that hope, and there is always hope. And like you said, there's continued progress. So don't, you know, there's no reason to lose that, and cling on to what you have. Cling on to the hope
Yeah.
that you have.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, thank you guys for joining us here on YouTube. If you are here, make sure to comment below. Tell us where you're from in the comments, and tell somebody else about this podcast today. We'd love to have more subscribers. And just as a huge thanks, we want to make sure you guys know we could not do this podcast and our YouTube channel without the help of our sponsors. We have Castle Biosciences, Immunocore, Aura Biosciences, and Delcath Systems who help to make this podcast possible. So thanks for joining us today, and we will see you guys next time.